and, to the wonder of all, could not be provoked to be angry with him. Later he married a daughter of Desiderius, king of the Lombards, at the instance of his mother, but he repudiated her at the end of a year for some reason unknown, and married Hildegard, a woman of high birth, of Swabian origin. He had 3 sons by her, Charles, Pepin, and Louis, and as many daughters, Hrudred, Bertha, and Gisela. He had 3 other daughters besides these, Theoderada, Hildrud, and Rudeide, 2 by his 3rd wife, Fastrada, a woman of East Frankish, that is to say of German origin, and the 3rd by a concubine, whose name for the moment escapes me. At the death of Fastrada in 794, he married Liutgard, an Alemannic woman, who bore him no children. After her death, June 4th, 800, he had 3 concubines, Gerswinda, a Saxon by whom he had Adaltrud, Regina, who was the mother of Drogo and Hugh, and Ethelind, by whom he had Theodoric. Charles's mother, Berthrada, passed her old age with him in great honour. He entertained the greatest veneration for her, and there was never any disagreement between them, except when he divorced the daughter of King Desiderius, whom he had married to please her. She died soon after Hildegard, after living to 3 grandsons and as many granddaughters in her son's house, and he buried her with great pomp in the Basilica of Saint Denis, where his father lay. He had an only sister, Gisela, who had consecrated herself to a religious life from girlhood, and he cherished as much affection for her as for his mother. She also died a few years before him in the nunnery where she passed her life. 19. Private life continued, Charles and the education of his children. The plan that he adopted for his children's education was, first of all, to have both boys and girls instructed in the liberal arts, to which he also turned his own attention. As soon as their years admitted, in accordance with the custom of the Franks, the boys had to learn horsemanship, and to practice war and the chase, and the girls to familiarize themselves with cloth-making, and to handle distaff and spindle, so that they might not grow indolent through idleness, and he fostered in them every virtuous sentiment. He only lost 3 of all his children before his death, 2 sons and 1 daughter, Charles, who was the eldest, Pepin, whom he had made king of Italy, and Hrudred, his oldest daughter, whom he had betrothed to Constantine VI, 780–802, Emperor of the Greeks. Pepin left 1 son named Bernard, and 5 daughters, Adelaide, Attila, Guntrada, Berthaide, and Theodorada. The king gave a striking proof of his fatherly affection at the time of Pepin's death in 810. He appointed the grandson to succeed Pepin, and had the granddaughters brought up with his own daughters. When his sons and his daughters died, he was not so calm as might have been expected from his remarkably strong mind, for his affections were no less strong, and moved him to tears. Again, when he was told of the death of Hadrian, 796, the Roman pontiff, whom he had loved most of all his friends, he wept as much as if he had lost a brother or a very dear son. He was by nature most ready to contract friendships, and not only made friends easily, but clung to them persistently, and cherished most fondly those with whom he had formed such ties. He was so careful of the training of his sons and daughters that he never took his meals without them when he was at home, and never made a journey without them. His sons would ride at his side, and his daughters follow him, while a number of his bodyguard, detailed for their protection, brought up the rear. Strange to say, although they were very handsome women, and he loved them very dearly, he was never willing to marry any of them to a man of their own nation or to a foreigner, but kept them all at home until his death, saying that he could not dispense of their society. Hence, though otherwise happy, he experienced the malignity of fortune as far as they were concerned, yet he concealed his knowledge of the rumours current in regard to them, and of the suspicions entertained of their honour. 20. Conspiracies against Charlemagne. By one of his concubines he had a son, handsome in face but hunchbacked, named Pepin, whom I omitted to mention in the list of his children. When Charles was at war with the Huns and was wintering in Bavaria, 792, this Pepin shammed sickness, and plotted against his father in company with some of the leading Franks, who seduced him with vain promises of the royal authority. When his deceit was discovered, and the conspirators were punished, his head was shaved, and he was suffered, in accordance with his wishes, to devote himself to a religious life in the monastery of Prüm. A formidable conspiracy against Charles had previously been set on foot in Germany, but all the traitors were banished, some of them without mutilation, others after their eyes had been put out. 3 of them only lost their lives. They drew their swords and resisted arrest, and after killing several men were cut down because they could not be otherwise overpowered. It is supposed that the cruelty of Queen Fastrada was the primary cause of these plots, and they were both due to Charles's apparent acquiescence in his wife's cruel conduct, and deviation from the usual kindness and gentleness of his disposition. All the rest of his life he was regarded by everyone with the utmost love and affection, so much so that not the least accusation of unjust rigour was ever made against him. 21. Charlemagne's treatment of foreigners. He liked foreigners, and was at great pains to take them under his protection. There were often so many of them, both in the palace and the kingdom, that they might reasonably have been considered a nuisance, but he, with his broad humanity, was very little disturbed by such annoyances, because he felt himself compensated for these great inconveniences by the praises of his generosity and the reward of high renown. End of chapter 21.